From this Frontier A321 that ingested a human while taking off, and this regional jet which got shot down mid-flight, to this Russian fighter pilot who was forced to eject, and much more. Here are some of the craziest aviation moments caught on camera. On February 23rd of 2017, Storm Doris was tearing across Western Europe. Winds at Amsterdam's Schiphol airport were gusting up to 53 miles per hour. Even some massive jumbo jets had to go around. A Flybe Bombardier Dash 8, a light regional turboprop, had already been delayed 90 minutes in Edinburgh thanks to the storm, carrying 59 passengers on board. One passenger decided to record the stormy landing when things took a turn for the worst. Emergency crews raced out to inspect the aircraft as passengers quickly evacuated. Thankfully, there was no fire and no one was injured. The Sukhoi Su-25 is a Soviet-era attack jet built to fly low and hit hard. It's been a workhorse in just about every conflict Russia has fought since the 80s. Sometime in the summer of 2022, a Russian pilot decided to record his mission with a GoPro when he got struck. Our pilot took a hit, likely from a Ukrainian surface-to-air missile. One of his engines caught fire, and part of the tail was ripped off. The Su-25 nosedived into a field below and erupted in a massive fireball. Thankfully, he landed safely, and this marked the first time anyone had seen a combat ejection filmed from the pilot's perspective. On July 6th of 2021, this test pilot was preparing to run some tests on a newly built T-51 at Northeast Ohio Regional Airport. The plane suffered from a laundry list of issues: an overloaded electrical system, missing cowling panels, and a faulty prop governor. The mechanic on site told him not to fly it. Our pilot said he'd just taxi it around. Instead, he skipped his pre-takeoff checks, lined up on the runway, and decided to take the bird into the skies.
Well, I got it all on video.
The left main gear collapsed on impact. Thankfully, our pilot walked away without a scratch, but the owner unfortunately had to say goodbye to his aircraft. On November 13th of 2020, an AN-124 took off from Novosibirsk-Tolmachevo Airport in Russia. The plane was hauling 84 tons of automotive parts on a chartered route from Seoul to Vienna, with a planned fuel stop in Novosibirsk. 14 crew members were on board. Shortly after takeoff, the No. 2 engine violently exploded. Shrapnel tore through the fuselage, shredded cabling, and knocked out the plane's electrical systems. The transponder went dead. The radio went silent. To air traffic control, the giant aircraft simply vanished from their screens. Our pilots wrestled the crippled plane around and lined up for an emergency landing, but 390,000 pounds of airplane doesn't stop easy.
Давайте, давайте, молодчики.
Не успеет, сука, затормозить. Тяжелый.
The AN-124 ended up plowing into the snow, snapping its nose gear. All 14 crew on the flight managed to evacuate safely, but the plane was too damaged to move until the Army was called in to lend a hand. The Hudson River has seen its fair share of aviation disasters. On April 10th of 2025, a Bell 206 Long Ranger was touring New York City from the skies. It was the aircraft's 8th flight of the day, but little did the passengers know the helicopter wouldn't see a 9th. The aircraft plunged into the Hudson after its tail boom failed. Witnesses heard a loud crack before watching the aircraft tumble into the river. Unfortunately, all 6 on board were killed. They were celebrating their child's birthday. On January 21st of 2024, an AirFrance A350 was on final into Toronto. The first officer was at the controls as part of a training flight. A passenger decided to record the landing when our captain called for a go-around. The first officer pushed up the nose, but a little too hard. Thankfully, our pilot circled the airport and landed safely on the same runway about 15 minutes later. Unfortunately, the 3-year-old aircraft sustained serious damage to its rear fuselage, and the return flight to Paris was canceled. The EA-18G Growler is the U.S. Navy's flagship electronic warfare jet. It's built on the same airframe as the FA-18 Super Hornet, but instead of dropping bombs, the Growler jams enemy radar and communications. Each one runs about $68 million and flies with a 2-person crew. On May 17th of 2026, 2 Growlers were performing an aerial demonstration at the Gunfighter Skies Airshow in Idaho. It's the first time they'd held the event in 8 years. The 2 jets lined up for a close proximity formation pass, where the 2 jets were supposed to scream past each other at high speed with almost no room to spare, when spectators on the ground witnessed something terrifying. Thankfully, all 4 crew managed to eject just in time before the 2 jets hit the ground and erupted into a fireball. They were listed in stable condition shortly after. Nobody on the ground was hurt either. The rest of the airshow was canceled, and the base went into lockdown while investigators moved in. Christmas Day of 2024 is a day Azerbaijan will never forget. That morning, an Azerbaijan Airlines Embraer E190 took off from Baku en route to Grozny, Russia. The plane carried 62 passengers and 5 crew members. As the plane entered Russian airspace nearing Grozny, both GPS systems went dark. Russian forces were actively fending off a Ukrainian drone attack in the area, and their electronic jamming knocked out the plane's navigation. Catastrophe struck when passengers heard a loud explosion outside the aircraft. Shrapnel from a Russian surface-to-air missile tore through the fuselage. People on the ground watched and recorded as the pilots desperately tried to regain control. Sadly, they were fighting a losing battle. The plane had already lost almost all of its hydraulic systems and controls. It rolled right and slammed into the ground about 3 kilometers short of the runway. Of the 67 souls on board, 38 were killed, including both pilots. 29 survived, many of them seated in the tail section. Azerbaijan's president later confirmed what the world suspected. The plane was shot down by Russia, although unintentionally. Denver International Airport is the largest airport in the United States by total land area, covering 33,000 acres of land with 36 miles of perimeter fencing. Late on the night of May 9, 2026, a Frontier Airlines A321 was preparing for takeoff en route to LAX. The plane had 224 passengers and 7 crew members on board. They began their takeoff roll, but what they didn't know was that someone was walking on the runway. Thankfully, the plane was just below takeoff speed, and our pilots immediately aborted, bringing the plane to a stop on the runway. Smoke began filling the cabin, and the crew evacuated all 231 people via the emergency slides. Passengers reported minor injuries, and 5 were taken to local hospitals. The person was later identified as 41-year-old Michael Mott. He had a history of criminal activity, but was released because he was mentally unfit to attend trial. On November 11, 2019, a GoAir A320 was on final approach through heavy fog, with 180 people on board. With the pilots lined up for runway, a passenger decided to record what they thought would be a normal landing, but our pilots were off by a few feet. Apparently, the crew mistook something else for the center line and steered the plane to the left. The plane rolled through some grass before going around. Thankfully, the aircraft only suffered minor damage and a few grass weeds in the landing gear.